Stories on the front pages this morning. Andy sweats over police probe on the Sun, and the Mail's got King's threat to shame Andrew by stripping titles. I'm told constitutionally he's still technically got the titles. He's just not now going to use them.
That is correct. It has to be rescinded by Parliament, and obviously now he's not using them. It's semantics in many ways, but if for someone like Prince Andrew, it's humiliating in many ways because he loves being part of the royal family. You know, he has. Every time you see him, he struts around like a peacock. So, you know, that this is his DNA. And now he's no longer Duke of York, and neither is his wife able to use the Duchess of York title as well.
Right.
So it's deeply humiliating. But actually, this drip feed of further allegations, I think, is far more serious for Prince Andrew. As he said in his statement, he strongly denies all these allegations against him, but these allegations seem to be intensifying and making it harder for him. Every time something seems to be coming, and it's deeply frustrating and embarrassing for the rest of the royal family, particularly the King and Prince William.
Well, because if you think back to the interview we did with Emily Maitlis on the BBC, we're talking about 2019. We'll have a look at it in a second. But, 6 years ago, he started this sort of narrative, which turns out to be, shall we say, not entirely truthful, because this is what he had to say about his relationship week, I think, to be revealed as a nonsense, because it turned out that he had an email exchange, or several email exchanges, beyond that point, and after that point, in which he also said, we're in it together, and we will play more soon, or something like that.
Well, yes, and you can look at that statement in many ways, probably. And even Emily Maitlis is now saying she's sort of revisiting the whole interview.
Yeah.
Because there are sort of holes in the story. And obviously with this drip feed of these emails coming out, it only makes matters worse for him. Because it clearly shows that this whole interview seems to be extremely flawed, and endlessly the jokes about the sweating, the Pizza Express moments, it really does. And maybe people are saying, well, why didn't the royal family make a stronger move right there and then? But the problem was the Queen was still alive then. He was perceived to be her favoured son, so that made it even more difficult to deal with because she felt she couldn't bring herself to do it. But obviously the King feels he's now been backed into a corner and has put pressure on Prince Andrew to retire, from the Knight of the Garter, also for his title as Duke of York. But there is far more serious concerns now, because if there could be a police investigation into these emails suggesting that he was trying to passing on the date of birth and the social security number of Virginia Giuffre. And if that is proved to be something, then that is a very serious allegation against Prince Andrew and whoever was involved at the time. And did they do anything about it? So I think there could easily be a police investigation if there is found to be something at fault here.
Right, and I read somewhere, I think this morning, that said this would be the first time the police have investigated a member of the royal family for 20 years. When was the last one?
Now, you caught me on the hop there, but it doesn't happen very often. But actually, the seriousness of this nature is huge. And I think that is the problem, because if he was seen to be trying to find something, and remember, this was at the time of the photograph coming out, and he was with Virginia Giuffre in 2011 when it came out in the Mail on Sunday. So I think that is when this alleged incident may have taken place. And if that is the case, then again it throws into the whole question what is going on. And bear in mind that he also paid Virginia Giuffre, we believe, something in the region of $12 million. And now with her book coming out, for the royal family, this is going to be, again, a very frustrating time. But royal family do tend to keep out, the odd speeding offence here and there. But anything like this would be a very serious sort of allegations. And maybe if the police do investigate, it's more problems for Prince Andrew.
Yeah. Well, exactly right. You'll be delighted to know I've got to the bottom of the 20-year thing.
Yeah,
Apparently, the last time was Princess Anne, the Princess Royal,
yeah.
when she was convicted of a criminal offence in 2002. She pleaded guilty at East Berkshire Magistrates Court to a charge under the Dangerous Dogs Act, which I seem to remember,
Oh,
which is slightly less serious, it seems to me, than this. It was a Telegraph making something of that. Her pet dog Dottie bit two children in Windsor Great Park. She was fined £500. I mean, this seems to me to be on a slightly higher scale than that.
this is far more serious. Yes, okay, it wasn't a great look for the Princess Royal. I know actually it comes. I remember this now.
Yeah.
But in terms of, and obviously not a good look for Princess Anne at the time. But
Right.
in terms of Prince Andrew, this is something that could be very serious if it's found to be true. And yet questions his judgment through the whole thing.
Yeah.
Remember, he thought he did a good job in that Emily Maitlis interview, and that is where you have it all stems from his arrogance, maybe his stupidity, but and now his love of being the grandstanding. You think he could rise above the law? Well, maybe this might be something that proves that he can't.
Well, yeah, that's the problem, isn't it? And I mean, he has continually kind of tried to hold the line, but eventually, as we were reading over the weekend, somehow the king was able to persuade him that this was the right course of action, and he's kind of gone along with it. But do you not think that many people said this to me, that he should just kind of not just disappear from public life, but sort of go into some form of exile somewhere? I'm told that he was offered a palace in the UAE that he could occupy if he wanted to. He could go to some, protectorate like the Falklands, and that might be appropriate given, that's where I suppose he made his name, if you like, during the Falklands War. Because the longer he stays in Windsor, and he drives around and pictures get taken of him, and there's always something that he might go to or might not go to. There's always going to be a sort of a bit of a smell and a vague stench around the royal family.
Well, the trouble is he has this lease on Royal Lodge, and and it's always been said that if he can continue to fund his staying there, then there's no issue because he has a lease to, I think, 2078.
Right.
That's the problem. But actually, what we won't do is see him at family occasions. The last time that we saw him at a family occasion was obviously at the funeral of the Duchess of Kent, and when he stood next to Prince William, looks could kill as far
But
as Prince William is
presumably
concerned.
William would want to avoid anything like that in the future. The other thing that he might do is, because he hasn't been back to America for fear of being, hauled in by the FBI and questioned, is maybe if he thinks there's a police inquiry going on in Britain, he won't want to be here either.
Well, I think he might be the US investigating as well, because maybe it's against American law with what he was doing. So there will be all sorts of ramifications if this is allegations, where it might lead. So for Prince Andrew, he won't be seen at anything now, because every time that he turns up at a sort of private public function of the royal family, whether it be Christmas or a funeral, he becomes the story, and the royal family are fed up with him being the story so regularly, and obviously with all these scandals allegedly attached to whatever he does as well. So this is the problem for the royal family, and it is their big problem, and they don't actually know what to do about it ultimately. But Prince William, I think, will take a pretty dim view and say, may not even have you at my coronation when that time comes.
Indeed. One just final question to ask you about, sort of horse related in a way. Betfred this morning in the papers, the Warrington-based bookmaker, saying basically that they will close down their entire operation if Rachel Reeves increases gambling taxes in the budget on November 26th. They've got 1,300 betting shops, 7,000 jobs that they provide. Fred and Peter Dunn, the owners of Betfred. This is the betting tax that people are worried about in racing and other sports as well, right?
Well, mainly racing, and racing is trying to draw attention to the fact that if the levy is increased, it will have a huge impact on the revenue. Now, if they close that number of shops, it's not just about those people losing their jobs. There are media rights attached to so Betfred will pay huge media rights to show racing in their betting shops. Well, if they close all of them, that will be a huge cutback in media rights revenue for the sport, not just the tax as well, because there is less coming in, and Fred and Peter Dunn are no mugs when it comes to business, and they built it up from scratch to one of the biggest betting operations in this country. So will Rachel Reeves take note? This is the big problem for racing. Will they? Because it might be, in many people's eyes, an easy tax to levy, but actually the implications for racing, which is a huge rural economy, and in the high streets as well, with all the betting shops. Okay, the betting shops, the change in sort of people's habits means that maybe they don't have as long-term a future. But in terms of the short-term problems for racing, if this tax is increased, it will have a huge impact on the sport, which is one of the biggest employers, not only in a rural sense, but also racecourses, the hospitality industry. It will be a serious problem for the sport if Rachel Reeves does. But the runes do feel as if she will. So racing could have a very big problem going forward.
Yeah, absolutely right. Good to talk to you, Rupert. Thank you very much indeed. Talks more.
Sarah Ferguson has always had a flair for theatrics, but the revelations surfacing now about her jaw-dropping spending habits go far beyond what even the most devoted royal watchers ever imagined. These weren't just extravagant moments. They were spectacles. Think feasts grand enough to satisfy Henry VIII himself, staggering bills for personal trainers she hardly ever used, and shopping sprees so out of control that even the Queen reportedly had to intervene to settle the debts, according to royal biographer Andrew Loney, whose new book The Rise and Fall of the House of York exposes the Duchess' financial chaos. Sarah wasn't simply living comfortably, she was living as if the money would never end. Loney claims the Duchess of York amassed millions in debt, all while indulging in a non-stop carousel of designer purchases, private coaching sessions, lavish dinner tables, and an endless flow of luxury goods. He paints a portrait of a world defined by pure, unchecked excess.